Hi, I'm Krista Johnson. This is Theodore. He's my Appalachian Trainer Face-Off competition horse. He just arrived here 3 days ago, so I'm still getting to know him and still trying to feel him out. So I'm just going to put him through some tests that I test out on the ground to test any horse to kind of figure out what they know and what they don't know. You can use the same thing if you're going to look at a horse that's for sale or you happen to get one that you're not sure what they know. I use the same assessment for all of them, so we'll get started on that. He's a pretty friendly guy. I already know I can kind of touch him all over, and he does okay for picking up his feet. But I'll just start right here since I'm here. He backs off the halter most of the time fairly decent. Just putting some pressure backwards and down towards the leg that's the furthest forward until he feels light. Put some effort in there. Not terrible. He could get a little bit lighter, but this is just an initial assessment. I don't expect him to know all this. I'm just seeing if he responds to any of this stuff and how he responds. I'm putting a 2-beat up and down rhythm in the rope. I'm wanting him to back up there, and he's not understanding. So that's where I'll support with my stick and just kind of point up in the center of his chest. I'm going to back up a little bit more there. That rhythm in the rope. And there he's thinking leak off there. I'm trying to tell him that that door's closed, that door's closed, this door's closed. I'll try that again, and this isn't necessarily a training video on how to train him how to do this, but I'm going to note that he's doing the opposite of what I'm trying to ask him here. Let's see if he can figure it out. There. But I don't want him to just leak off and waller off and go. I just want 1 or 2 steps backwards. If you haven't watched my boundaries for riding communication and groundwork video, a lot of this stuff will be in there. I'm drawing out the boundary in front of his nose, the one to his right, the one to his left, there's one behind his tail, and then one above his poll if he were to get high-headed. But I might try that one more time, see if you can kind of understand. There he's thinking forward. I want him to think backwards. Pawing is not backwards. There we go. And again, it's not really a training video to teach him how to do that today, but I'm just observing on what works well, what doesn't work well, so then I know what to work on. I'm going to see if I can connect this direct rein to his front left foot and have him step it over. I'm pointing my toes, belly button, and rein hand right where I want his front feet to go. I've changed the angle of that snap a little bit. He's not quite following it. I want him to think to follow that with his nose. There goes the nose. There goes the foot. That's actually not too bad. I want him to step a little bit more over, but that's a pretty good start. I'm going to put a forward feel on the rope and then give him a little tap to drive him forward to follow that feel on the rope, see if he can understand that. I want him to stay out of my 4-foot bubble here, so I'm just going to own my space with the stick here. He did bump into it with his belly a little bit there, and I wasn't sure what to think about that. It just means don't be there. It doesn't mean go faster. It doesn't mean worry about it. It just means don't be there. But I want him to position me to where I'm in the saddle here. I've got my rein in neutral down at my right hip. I don't want him to be pushing on me. I don't want him to be pulling on me. So that's actually fairly decent there. He's putting some effort into the walk. There I'm just waving the stick up and down towards his eye to kind of drift him out of my space. He seems to understand that okay. I want to see if he's a pretty confident guy, but I'm going to test out some other confidence thing. Can I throw this up over his back and have him be confident about that and not worry about it? There he's trying to tell me it worries him a little bit because he can see it out of that right eye, and then all of a sudden it appears up over his back in that left eye, and he's telling me that worries him a little bit. So that's something else that I'll work on. A lot of times we're pretty good about doing a lot of confidence stuff while they're standing still, kind of in a parked position. But we often fail to do it when they're in motion. It's so much more important to do it while they're in motion, because when we're riding, most of the time we're going to be in motion. So he could use a little bit more work on confidence, and he could use a little bit more work there on walking until I ask him to do something else. I like how his nose is going there and how he went forward better that time. So I'm going to start to put a forward feel on the rope with my hand pretty level. I want to think about putting that snap out in front of his nose. I want him to follow that and go faster. He's just kind of wearing that. So I'm going to tell him that boundary behind his tail is closing. I'm going to think of a conveyor belt coming at the same speed and then booting him if he doesn't move out of the way. Since he's not trotting yet, I'm going to keep that same feel on the rope and let him know that that boundary's hitting behind his tail. When he trots, that slack should go back in the rope. I like that he's not pulling on me. I might ask him to walk. I'm going to ask for that downward transition as I'm sliding that hand. He did a little too much there, but I'm pointing that hand kind of behind where the stirrup would be. And he thought hindquarter yield, and he's absolutely correct, but he thought come to complete stop. So that tells me that someone's done a little bit of groundwork with him, but maybe hasn't gone beyond kind of preschool with that hindquarter yield. I eventually want him to go forward and a hindquarter yield around in a circle, but we'll test that out as we go along here. So I'm going to see if he can go the other way. I like how his nose is full on that, and he immediately picked up that front right foot and stepped it over a little bit. That is absolutely correct. So he's starting to tell me that he understands a little bit about what the direct rein means, which is great. A little bit about his story is I was told that he was ridden some, and that was about it. They didn't really say if that went well or didn't go well or what extent of experience he had with riding. So same thing on this side. Work on that confidence thing. There, he's not sure what that means, and usually when they stop like that, it's kind of a opposition reflex response. Sometimes they'll actually kind of try to run away for a brief second and then slam to a stop. He's not being that dramatic about it. He's just kind of telling me he's not sure what to do. And that's where I'll just give him some support with my rein here and say keep going, and then drive the hock forward towards his nose. So this is different than this. If you want more information on how I use my training stick to communicate different things, I did a video about it on, I think it was called How to Use a Training Stick, something along those lines. Have available there on my YouTube channel. I don't want him just to think stop there. So I'm going to see if he can follow that feel again off of that snap. I'm going to put that feel forward with my hand. He's not thinking that means anything right now. So that's where I'm going to take my stick string like a conveyor belt, the same speed, come forward, push his hock towards his nose. There he thought about shifting his weight in the trot, so I'll take that and then I'll ask again. If we can get our timing so good to where we can release on the thought or the shift of weight, that's better than taking our timing off when we're too late. I'm going to say trot, push the hock forward, push the hock forward. I'll get a little bit more effective here if I need to, because I don't want him to think that's a confidence thing that he should just kind of tolerate and wear. I actually want that to mean go forward faster or to drive your hock under your nose. So I was already asking with the rope, and then he's told me that that doesn't mean anything to him. There, I'm going to remind him to stay out of my circle. That doesn't mean stop. So he's kind of telling me if he's not sure about things, he might stop. And that's okay. I do want him to be able to think, though, and use his brain while he's moving his feet. But these are all just little observations I'm making, which I'm well aware that, you know, everybody that handles a horse or rides a horse have different ways of doing things, and I highly doubt that someone's done things this exact same way with him, so I understand that some of these things might be offered to him in a different way than he might be used to. But I want to see if these things make sense to him because they're important for me. For me to actually ride a horse, I want to see that they can yield forward, yield backwards, walk, trot, canter off of a 12-foot rope on a circle both directions, preferably off of a feel off the rope because that's going to relate to our rein. And they need to connect that rein to their feet. When I started to send him out, I was connecting that rein to his front feet using a direct rein. I haven't done a whole lot of the indirect rein yet here, but I do want to work on that and check that out. I want to get him to think, actually commit to that trot before I ask for the downward transition. So I'm going to slide my hand down, point towards where the stirrup would be. He's telling me he's pretty light about that, and he thinks that means stop. I'm going to let him know I just wanted to walk. That's something that can take a little bit of time to feel each other out as far as our timing and feel on that rope, because depending on the amount of feel I put on that and the angle I put on it, it's going to be different for a trot to walk downward transition. It's going to be different if I want him to continue going forward in that hindquarter yield on a small circle. If I actually want him to hindquarter yield and disengage to a stop, I'm going to lift my hand higher towards the top of his tail and slow my feet down to a stop. But I don't expect him to know all these things. There's just some differences. I don't want him to be in my bubble. I'm noticing that he's got a little less forward here on this left side, and then he kind of wants to crowd me. So that's where I'll just draw out my bubble here. You can start out by calling it your safety bubble, but it eventually kind of turns into your suppling bubble. So I want him to learn to supple around my person. Let's see if I can get him to understand. So he immediately loses the forward as soon as I change my balance. But I want to try to point behind where the stirrup would be with my rein hand. And I'm going to try to drive the hock forward here. Forward. So there he's thinking suck back. I want him to think forward. There we go. That's what I was looking for. I'll pat him. I was just tapping him there a few times to remind him to go forward. I don't want him to be scared by my tools at all. That's not the goal. I just want him to understand that I'm communicating with it, and I'm communicating different things with it at different times. But I don't expect him to know all this, and I really like how, for the most part, he's putting effort into figuring out what I want. And that's a huge deal. I've handled some horses that kind of got used to one person and that person's one way of doing things. And when I stepped in to try to handle the horse, it just kind of shut down and didn't try to figure out what I was asking for quite a bit of time. And it's great that I can step in here and handle him. And even though I'm probably doing things differently, he's putting effort into figuring out what I'm asking. So I really, really like that. So one other thing that I might check now that I've directed his feet a little bit, I might want to see how he is about picking his feet up. I usually start though with directing his feet with the rope first, because if I can't do that, it's going to be much harder and I'm in a much more vulnerable position testing out picking up his feet. But I'll usually just pet him, come down his withers here, down his leg, and I'm just petting his leg all the way down there to his hoof. And I'm going to come up and I'm going to squeeze that chestnut. I like to use that because horses will use that to each other to kind of dominate each other to pick up that foot. So beware if you haven't tried that before with your horse that they may try to nip back, because I'll see them actually do that. My horse Louie will do that to Sister out there in the pasture. I've seen him do it, and he'll go to try to nip her on the chestnut and she'll pick up her foot and then try to bite him back. So just beware that they might react that way if they're not used to having a person do that. I want him to think pick up his foot, so I'm going to look for any shift of weight there. Now he's just kind of wearing that. I might take my little leather popper here and just put some rhythmic pressure there on his leg until he starts to shift the weight like so, then I'm going to release. But I want him to think picking that foot up towards me. I don't want to make this a whole training session about how to pick up their feet, but I'm just kind of testing some things out, see what he knows. I really try not to just try to pick up their foot off the ground and kind of drag it off and muscle it. We can do better by them by teaching them to shift their weight, balance on those 3 legs, and act like a partner and pick up that foot for us. So here I'm just going to pat down his rump, down his hock, down to his hoof again. I'm just going to squeeze here a little bit on the hock until he takes some of the weight off of that. Which actually I might balance him a little bit better here because that right hind is a little further back. That might make it a little more tough for him to pick up this leg. So as a leader, if we can set our horse up to balance better for what we're asking for, it's going to help them find the right answer quicker. Do I eventually want them to think about how to shift their weight and act like a partner? Absolutely, but if this is something new or I'm not sure how he'll handle it, I'm going to help him set himself up to where this is going to be an easy answer. So he might need a little bit confidence building there with that back foot, but it's not terrible. Again, I want to balance him to where it's going to be easier for him to pick up this front right foot. I'm going to pet him. Squeeze that chestnut. Good. But I want him to think more about actually picking it up and allowing me to move it. He's kind of just picking it up and putting it right back down. Which if I was another horse biting him there, he's acting the exact same way. This most horses there. I love how he put that right in my hand there. That's perfect. Because he put so much effort in there, I'm not going to hold it up longer to test that out. That was great. I'll pat down his rump here, down his hock, down to his hoof. There, I might want to balance him a little bit better. These are some good little tips though, and you're holding your horse for the farrier, and if you can help balance them a little bit better so they can pick that foot up, it makes it a little easier on everybody. I looked and saw that he started to shift that weight, and that's when I want to release. If I release once his foot's up in the air, I'm a little too late. Oh, that's not too bad at all. Let's pet him. Let him put his foot back down. So those are some things I would assess. Like I want to be able to see him canter on the 12-foot rope, but I kind of can already feel that that wouldn't go very well because he's not following that feel on the rope well enough to go into that trot. The better I can get that going and the better I can get him maintaining the trot until I ask for something else, the better luck I'll have with that canter, but that'll be something that I continue to work on. But I'm very, very pleased to feel that he's not super heavy on the rope, that he tries to figure out what I want. He's putting a lot of effort into picking up his feet with not knowing me very well. And he's pretty comfortable coming in here and settling in. This is only the second time he's ever been in this arena. This is only the third day he's been here. So I'm pretty excited to see that he's actually got some good education there, and it's good stuff for me to build on. Thanks for joining us.